Hello and welcome to another NihongoGamer video. I've got a couple of very interesting looking monitors here, and as you know, I'm always on the lookout for stuff to make my life more portable, mainly because I'm a big fan of handhelds like Nintendo Switch or the Steam Deck, or recently the Asus ROG Ally. These monitors come in at what's known as 2K. They're using slightly uncommon resolutions here, and the one here is running at 2520 by 1680, and this one here is running at 2560 by 1600. But what's actually really interesting about these screens is that they might be perfect for that sweet spot in between Full HD, 1080p, and 4K, which is sometimes a little bit too much work for your PC to handle running games at 4K 60 FPS. This one here is the more expensive of the two. It is 16 by 10 in screen ratio, and it's 120 Hertz. So this is definitely the more gaming focused of the two screens. It's got a matte screen instead of a glossy screen, and on the back you can also see that it's got VESA mounting holes. So you can see that there are speaker grills on the right side and the left side of the screen. Also, when we're looking at the side of the monitor, you can see that there are 5 buttons here for selecting the power switch or the brightness or the volume, or just the general on-screen menu for all of the other things like color adjustments and that sort of thing. There's also one more port here on the side, which is OTG. It's a micro USB port. Now, I would go into more detail about what the micro USB port does, but unfortunately the two manuals that came with these monitors are both for this monitor. So actually, I don't have a manual that tells me exactly how to use this monitor. Fortunately, monitors are generally quite simple, and so you don't really need a manual. Anyway, in terms of connectivity, you've got a full-size HDMI port here on the side and 2 USB-C ports. I think one of them might just be for power delivery, and the other one is for display over USB-C. And you can use that for things like plugging a Nintendo Switch directly into the screen with no docking station whatsoever. Now moving on to this monitor, it is the thinner of the two and also the stranger of the screen ratios. This is a monitor at 3 by 2, and so the resolution, like I said before, is 2520 by 1680. This one has a glossy finish on the front. As you can see, it reflects the lights in my room, and if you use this monitor during the day, it will reflect everything. There's no like non-reflective coating, or if there is one, it's not very good. It basically reflects everything. It's very difficult to see what's on the screen if you're playing this during the day or if you have lights on in your room. Flipping it around to the side, you can see just how slim this is. Now the top 2/3 of the screen are basically like, I think it's 0.3 centimeters, and the bottom third of the screen is closer to like a full centimeter. Maybe it's like 0.8 centimeters. It's really still very thin even down here. And because it is so slim, there are no speakers on the side. The actual speakers are here on the back of the monitor. For plugging this into something like a games console or your PC, you've got mini HDMI, which is a very unusual connector these days. And you also have 2 USB-C ports. I believe the lower one is only for charging and power delivery, and the one above it is for actually showing display over USB-C, which is something you can do with just a Nintendo Switch. If you are playing games on this monitor, if you're playing on Switch, maybe you'll be fine with 60 Hertz, but if you're playing on Steam Deck or on PC or on the Asus ROG Ally, you'll want to be able to run your games also at 120 Hertz, and this monitor can only do 60. It's unlike the other monitor. Instead of having 5 buttons, you've got this rocker switch instead, so you can rock it up, rock it down, and you can also push it in. Alright, now we want to talk about which monitor you should be buying. They're both 2K in resolution. They've got slightly different resolutions, but they're 2K. They're not HD monitors and they're not 4K monitors. They're right there in the middle. But in order to decide between the two monitors, I've broken them up into categories. So the first one is looks. Do you want a monitor that is a glossy finish and shiny like this, so it's nice maybe when you're watching movies? Or would you like a monitor that has a matte finish, so that no matter what angle you place it at, even if there's a light, like you can see a light is right here, it's diffuse and it's not really distracting and it's not difficult to see through that image to your actual game. The other thing to consider when talking about looks is the fact that this just looks thicker. If you want a monitor that looks super slim and is impressive because it's nice and small and light, then this is not the one you want to go for. This one is just It's just gorgeous how thin this monitor is. The second category is mounting options. Now, the gaming monitor actually has a VESA mount on the back. This is a very standard mounting system, so you can put this on a monitor stand, or you can actually clamp it to your desk using like an arm that moves it around. So many cool things that you can do with a VESA mountable monitor. However, on the 3x2 monitor, because it's nice and thin like this, and because they assume you're mostly going to be using it with the included case, they assume that you're mostly going to be using it like this, where you just have it standing up on your table like this, or folded like so. The next category is your OS. If you're using a Nintendo Switch, it will just output the image directly here to whatever it is, 800p or 1080p or 720p, whatever resolution it chooses when using the game handheld in docked mode. If you're plugging into a PC, it can get a little bit complicated. Now, on a regular PC, like a regular Windows PC, you're not going to have too many issues with the resolution. What I did have an issue with was plugging either of these monitors into my Mac. Now, this is not really a fault of the monitors, it's just Mac does not like certain monitors, and so to run at 2K resolution, all of the UI elements that you're used to seeing on a Mac become really, really tiny. It defaults to 720p, and it looks like you're looking at a 720p screen. Maybe it's just the UI elements that have been enlarged, but in any case, I feel like if you're going to buy an external monitor for a Mac, you need to do a little bit more research. The next thing to consider is the resolution of the games you're playing. Again, if you're running on Nintendo Switch, it's generally not a problem, but when you're playing games on PC, it depends on how good the port is, and not all ports have been set up for non-standard screen ratios. Generally speaking, games are fine with 16:10. They're all set up to also work on Steam Deck, so they understand it. For example, when I tried to run Atelier Ryza on this 3x2 screen, I didn't even have an option to use this screen resolution. When I played Ryza on this screen, which is the 16:10 monitor, it gave me the option to play at 1440p, so that's all the pixels being used properly, not stretched or anything to a weird scale, and then just blocking off black borders on the top and the bottom and playing the game at 1440p. When I plugged the 3x2 monitor in and tried to play Ryza, it only gave me a full HD option. It just didn't recognize that this was a 2K monitor at all. So the moral of the story is, with these 3x2 monitors, your mileage may vary as to whether they actually work. The last thing I'll say about resolution is that even if it tells you that it's working, so it says now running at 1600p or 1680, or it's running at 1440p, whatever it is, there is also this element of anxiety that it's not quite right. And the reason I'll say that is because often these monitors, they'll say, okay, running at 1440p, and it's fine, and there's a black border here and a black border here, and it looks right. But then some of the settings, I set them to just HD, so 1080p. And what that should have done is play the game with black borders on the top and the bottom. Instead, it would stretch the whole image out. And if you're anxiety-ridden OCD like me, it's just kind of stressful just thinking about it. Now, the next thing is just completely ease of use. This one has 5 buttons on the side, but they're not labeled from the side. You can't see what they actually say unless you turn it to the back of the monitor. But that being said, this one, even though it's simpler, I just don't really like these rocker switches. The next thing you should consider is probably the most important one, and that's frame rate. This one, like I said, is the gaming focused one, and it runs at 120 Hz. Now, because I play a lot of fighting games on this channel, I was really interested to see how it would perform in fighting games, and in Street Fighter 6, on 120 Hz with input reduction switched on, the gaming monitor was averaging 3 to 4 frames of input delay, which is really good. But even on the gaming monitor, if you just set it to 60 Hz instead and you turn input reduction off, then it jumps up dramatically to something closer to 6 to 7 frames of input delay. Now, just to summarize a few more things at the end, I thought that the 3x2 monitor was going to be significantly different in shape to the gaming monitor. In the original email, they said this monitor is going to be closer to 4x3 because it's 3x2. And I was like, well, Steam Deck's not 4x3, but I'll take your word for it, maybe 3x2 is a lot bigger than I'm expecting, so they sent the 3x2 monitor. But they also told me that the gaming monitor was available and that it's 16 by 10. And I thought, okay, 16 by 10, so maybe this one will have a lot less height, and maybe this one will be quite a lot taller because it's 3 by 2. But then I did the math in my head, and 3 by 2, if you multiply it, it becomes basically 15 by 10, and this screen is 16 by 10, and as you can see, when I finally got them out of the box, I was like, oh yeah, but I am glad that Chinchak sent both of them to me because they are significantly different, and there are reasons why you might want to go for one or the other. I think it's more likely that most people will want to go for the gaming one, and I think Chinchak will be happy about that because this is the more expensive one. But if you want a monitor that is much lighter, much slimmer, and has a glossy screen, and has a 3 by 2 ratio for maybe, I don't know, if you're checking your photos and you want to check them full screen, then actually a 3 by 2 monitor might be perfect. But since this is a gaming channel and we mostly play Nintendo Switch and fighting games, this is definitely the option that I would go for if you can get it at a good price. And finally, I'm going to leave you with which monitor I'm going to be using personally. Now, I really wanted to use this one because it's 3 by 2. I thought maybe it's going to have a little bit more height. Maybe if I use it sideways like this, I can use it as the perfect monitor for showing the chat when I do live streams. Unfortunately, as you can see, there's no way to mount this. The only way I could mount this would be if I get a clamp that clamps onto this like this, but as you can see, look how thin this monitor is, and I don't want to bend it too much, but you can probably see if you don't have to push very hard to make this thing flex. That's when I considered using this. I've got this nice little clamp on here, and it's the perfect size. However, most stands of this size max out at this height, which is, I think, 230 millimeters. It just simply does not fit. I can't get it in here. Unfortunately, clamps like this just don't seem to exist for 16-inch monitors, which is why I've decided to go for this monitor. Now really, I want this one to be set up in landscape because another 120Hz monitor, absolutely, I would love to have that always ready for gaming. It's the only one that has VESA mounting here on the back. And so the gaming monitor that runs at 120Hz with a 16 by 10 screen ratio and a 2K resolution is the option that I'll be going for as my chat monitor, and if I can get a stand that's clever enough, hopefully it will be able to rotate into a landscape position for gaming when I need it to be like that. Anyway, that's all for these two Chinchak monitors. Again, when you find them on Amazon, they'll be called CNBANAN. I have no idea why. It's not a very catchy name, and actually, to be quite honest, a lot of these companies, they sometimes just disappear. They'll make their product for like a year and then they'll like vanish off the face of the earth, and maybe it won't even be called that by the time you watch this video. But that's what they're called right now, and actually at this very moment they are on sale. This one is $80 off and this one is $70 off, which is a huge savings, and it makes both of them roughly $100 to $150, which is a very good deal if you ask me for something at a 2K resolution and a 16-inch size. Finally, I also want to apologize for the sound quality in this video. Normally I have a microphone set up, and for the first half of the video it was recording, but then the battery died on my microphone halfway through, and I didn't notice because the LEDs are just not very bright and you just don't notice that sort of thing. Anyway, subscribe if you loved it, like the video if you haven't done so already, and comment below with which of these two monitors that you think would be better, or if you think that not going for a non-standard ratio and just getting a standard 16:9 1080p or 4K monitor is better, or maybe these 2K monitors are perfect. Let me know in the comment section below. That's all I've got time for today. I've been NihongoGamer. I'll see you in the next NihongoGamer video.